The rumor spread across Lagos like harmattan fire. People whispered it in offices, in crowded buses, in high-end restaurants where the wealthy liked to speak softly but watch loudly. Something had happened inside Okonkwo Petroleum Group, one of the largest privately owned oil and gas companies in West Africa, something no one could explain. A cleaner, a simple, quiet cleaner who pushed a trolley through the hallways every morning, had suddenly become the owner of the entire company. Not a shareholder, not a manager, not a director, the owner. And Lagos, a city that never ran short of gossip, found itself stunned into silence before exploding with curiosity. How can a cleaner be a billionaire? Who was he really? Was the company stolen? Did the board know? What of the managers? What of the staff who insulted him? Phones buzzed. Screenshots flew. Voices shook in disbelief. Some laughed. Some collapsed in shame. Some simply stared into space, remembering the things they had said to him. But the most shocking whispers were not about the company takeover. They were about the girl. The girl who treated the cleaner with kindness. The girl who defended him in front of others. The girl who spoke to him with respect when the whole office looked down on him. Her name was Nneka Okafor, and the city wanted to know what would become of her now. Because everyone had seen what happened 2 days earlier, the day the truth finally came out. And today was that day. Welcome to Spiritual African Stories, the home of captivating African folktales, supernatural mysteries, and deeply emotional stories inspired by the heart of our culture. Here, every tale carries a spirit, stories of love, betrayal, power, and redemption that connect the physical and the spiritual worlds. Before we begin, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that will move your soul and stir your imagination. The doors of Okonkwo Petroleum Group opened with their usual smooth, expensive glide. Sunlight spilled across the polished marble floors. Security guards stood straight, shoes shining. The giant glass walls reflected the movement of employees walking in for the day. But the atmosphere was different. There was a quietness, a tension in the air, like Lagos itself was holding its breath. A convoy of immaculate black SUVs rolled up to the building entrance. Doors opened. Security teams stepped out first, scanning the area with trained eyes. And then, slowly, calmly, he stepped out. The cleaner. But now he was dressed in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, cut to perfection. His shoes gleamed like mirrors. His wrist carried a subtle but unmistakably expensive watch. His posture was no longer small or quiet. It was powerful, natural, unforced. His name was Chuma Okonkwo. And today, the world finally knew it. Heads turned. Mouths dropped. Feet froze. People who once walked past him without greeting now stood as still as statues. Some swallowed hard. Some lowered their eyes. Some tried to remember the last thing they said to him. He did not raise his voice. He did not rush. He did not look angry. His face was calm, too calm. He walked through the lobby with the slow, steady pace of a man who had learned long ago that rushing was for people without control. Behind him, a team of lawyers and board executives followed, the same executives who once believed they controlled him. Beside him walked Chinedu, his loyal driver and closest friend, the only one who had always known the truth. But the eyes of the building did not follow the convoy. The eyes followed something else. They followed the girl. Standing near the reception desk, staring in confusion and disbelief and fear, was Nneka. Her brown eyes trembled. Her hands felt weak. Her breath caught in her throat. She remembered the nights they spoke during lunch breaks. She remembered the times she offered him water when everyone else ignored him. She remembered defending him when Desmond mocked him. She remembered something else too, something she could not say aloud. She had begun to care, not because of wealth, not because of appearance, not because she was searching for anything. She simply cared. And now, as she watched him walk toward her, the world around her blurred. The whispers grew stronger. That is the girl. That is the one who was close to him. What will happen to her now? Will he embarrass her? Will he reward her? Will he forget her? Desmond stood frozen near the elevator, his face pale, his body stiff. The same man who once insulted Chuma's dirty uniform now watched the billionaire approach. Everything was silent, uncomfortably silent, terrifyingly silent. Then, Chuma stopped, right in front of Nneka. Her heart thudded. Her lips parted slightly. Her voice could not find its way out. For a moment, he did not speak. He simply looked at her, Not like a billionaire, not like a man revealing his identity, but like someone seeing something important, something fragile, something real. Then he spoke. His voice was calm. His tone was controlled. But his words shook the building. Nneka, do you remember the first day we met? Her voice broke. Yes, she whispered. Good, he said softly. Because today, the whole city will learn what love really means. A wave of shock moved across the lobby. He turned slightly, not to face the board, not to face the cameras, but to face Desmond. And you, he said, his voice still soft, but carrying the weight of mountains, will remember the cost of pride. Desmond's legs nearly gave way. Nneka covered her mouth, trembling. The entire office stood frozen, alive but motionless. And then, the entire Lagos remembered exactly what transpired about a year ago. This is what exactly happened. The city of Lagos was awake long before the sun rose that morning. Car horns echoed through the streets. The soft hum of generators filled the air, and the early market sellers called out as they arranged their goods. Life moved quickly in Lagos, but the truth was this. Most people were not really living. They were only trying to survive. Among those people was Nneka Okafor. She lived with her elder brother, Benson, in a modest two-room apartment in Surulere. The building walls carried the stains of time and rainwater. The corridors smelled faintly of kerosene and seasoned stew. Still, there was warmth in that home, a quiet dignity shaped by struggle and love. That morning, Nneka was ironing her clothes carefully, smoothing each crease with gentle focus. Her hair was tied back neatly, her face fresh and natural. She did not wear expensive makeup or jewelry, but there was a grace about her that needed no decoration. Benson sat at the small dining table, lacing his worn work boots. He drove a commercial bus, waking every day before sunrise and returning long after the city slept. You are leaving early today, he said, glancing at Nneka. Yes, she replied softly. There is a new HR software training. I have to help set up before staff arrive. Benson nodded. His gaze softened. You work hard, Nneka. One day, life will reward you. Do not change who you are. She smiled. A small, grateful smile. I am all right, brother. I just want to grow little by little. There was silence for a moment, the kind of silence siblings understand without words. Outside, a knock sounded on the door, a playful, rhythmic knock. Open. It's Mio. It was their neighbor, Chinedu, the young man from the next compound who drove for one of the wealthy families in Ikoyi. Nneka opened the door and shook her head as he grinned. You people should come and see how my driver uniform is making me look like CEO today, Chinedu declared proudly, posing with exaggerated class. Benson laughed. You? CEO of what? Chop Life Holdings. They all laughed, and something warm filled the room. Chinedu turned to Nneka. Are you ready to go? I will drop you before heading to the island. Nneka nodded. She grabbed her modest handbag, checked her ID card, and stepped out. As she closed the door, Benson called after her. Remember, life is not how fast you climb, but how well your heart stays clean on the way up. She smiled again. I hear you, brother. She always heard him, but the world outside did not care how gentle a heart was. The headquarters of Okonkwo Petroleum Group stood tall and proud against the rising sun. Glass walls gleamed like polished crystal. The Nigerian flag fluttered softly near the entrance, its green and white colors bright in the morning light. Expensive cars rolled in. Shoes clicked sharply on marble floors. Laughter floated in corridors where power walked. Inside this world of wealth and authority, a single choice was about to change everything. But on this particular morning, Nneka walked in through the front doors quietly, blending with the routine of employees preparing for another busy day. She greeted the receptionist with a smile. Good morning, Blessing. Blessing barely looked up, her attention fixed on her phone. Yes, good morning, she murmured with dismissive carelessness. Nneka did not take offense. She simply continued on her way, because kindness, when it is true, does not need to be returned to stay alive. As she entered the hallway near the back offices, she saw someone she had not noticed before. A man, in a cleaner's uniform, pushing a trolley of supplies. He moved slowly, almost deliberately, as though he did not want to disturb the world. His face was calm, his eyes deep but gentle. This was Chuma Okonkwo, though no one knew it. At that time, everyone simply called him the cleaner. The staff often walked past him without a greeting. He was invisible in a building designed to notice only the powerful. But Nneka stopped. Not out of pity, not out of expectation, out of human decency. "Good morning," she said warmly. Chuma looked up, slightly surprised. He wasn't used to being seen. "Good morning," he replied quietly. There was something about the way he spoke, not the words, but the calmness in them. Like he was someone who had known both storms and silence. "You are new here?" she asked gently. He nodded. "First week." Nneka smiled again. "Well, welcome. The building can feel big when you first start. If you need help finding anything, you can ask me." His eyes softened, almost as if something inside him eased. "Thank you," he said. And that was it. A simple exchange. But this was where the story truly began. Meanwhile, in the upper floor boardroom, the mood was different. The board of directors sat around a polished mahogany table, discussing expansion plans, drilling operations, foreign partnerships. At the head of the table sat Desmond Kalu, the operations manager. His suit was sharp. His smile was practiced. His voice carried authority. But beneath that polished exterior was arrogance, and a hunger for more power than he deserved. "We must cut costs in the labor sectors," he announced. "Cleaners, drivers, interns, junior staff, they are all replaceable. We need to invest more in corporate image and executive travel. That is what investors notice." The board murmured in agreement, mostly because none of them wished to challenge him. Power had a way of silencing even those who should know better. But Desmond did not know something. The owner of the company, the true heir, was already inside the building, pushing a cleaner's cart, watching, listening, learning. And one day soon, everything would be revealed. But not yet, because destiny moves slowly before it strikes. Back to the lower hallway, Nneka continued walking. But Chuma watched her as she left. Not because of beauty, though she had it in quiet abundance, but because of something rarer, kindness without agenda. He had watched women walk into his life because they saw money. He had watched friends vanish when he refused to fund their greed. He had watched people bow to him like royalty simply because they saw his last name. But she saw a cleaner, and still treated him like a human being. For the first time in a long time, Chuma felt something stir quietly inside him. Hope. Just a small, fragile flame. But even a small flame can change the course of a life. And that was the beginning. But Lagos does not allow peace to grow quietly. Because there were eyes watching. Eyes that judged. Eyes that hated kindness. And very soon, those eyes would test them both. The following week unfolded quietly. But the quiet did not mean nothing was happening. Sometimes the most powerful changes move like water beneath the soil. Invisible, yet unstoppable. Every morning, Nneka arrived early. She arranged files, answered emails, organized meeting schedules, and prepared reports with careful precision. She did not complain. She did not rush. She did not try to impress anyone. She simply worked with dignity. And every morning, she crossed paths with Chuma. Sometimes in the hallway. Sometimes near the elevator. Sometimes at the small cafeteria at the back of the building. Their interactions were brief at first. A greeting, a shared smile, a small exchange of words. But something human and unspoken formed between them. Respect. Not attraction. Not flirting. Not desperation. Just respect. And that is how true love begins. Slowly, gently, genuinely, without force. One afternoon, the HR department was unusually loud. Laughter bounced across the office like thrown stones, the mocking kind of laughter. Blessing and Glory sat together, scrolling through social media, whispering loudly enough for others to hear. "You see that cleaner?" Glory sneered, chewing gum. "The one that walks like he is doing slow-motion movie?" Blessing laughed too loud. "I saw him. Someone like that? If life was fair, some people will not be allowed to even enter this building." Nneka looked up from her desk, her expression neutral but firm. "There is nothing wrong with him," she said quietly. "He works here just like everyone else." Blessing rolled her eyes. Nneka has started. "You always think you are mother of humanity." Glory leaned across the desk with a smirk. "Let us be honest, Nneka, a man like that cannot take care of you. You better open your eyes. If you want love, look up, not down. Money is the only language that counts in this Lagos." Nneka did not raise her voice. Her voice remained calm, but her words held strength. Money cannot complete a home where respect is missing. Their laughter stopped, not because they agreed, but because they had no answer to give. Across the hall, unnoticed, Chuma had been sweeping near the doorway. He heard every word, but he did not react. He simply kept working, slowly, calmly, but his eyes held a silence that was deep. Not anger, not pain, just awareness. He understood the world well. He had lived inside it from two different sides. But it was not their mockery that stayed with him. It was Nneka's courage. True goodness does not make noise. It simply stands. The cafeteria was small, dimly lit, and always smelling faintly of fried plantain. Most senior staff never ate there. They preferred rooftop lounges and restaurants designed for display. But Nneka did not care for display. She sat alone at a corner table with a small plate of rice and stew, eating quietly, her mind deep in thought. A moment later, she saw someone approach. It was Chuma, holding a simple plate of jollof rice. He did not ask before sitting. He only waited, a gentle question in his eyes. She nodded with a small smile. "You eat here too?" she asked. He returned a faint smile of his own. "It is quiet. I like quiet places." She nodded. Silence settled comfortably between them. It was the kind of silence that feels safe, not heavy. After a while, Nneka spoke. "What did you do before this job?" she asked softly, without judgment. Chuma thought for a moment, not because he did not know the answer, but because he wanted to answer truthfully without revealing too much too soon. "I worked with my hands," he replied. "I helped manage something important to my family. But sometimes, life teaches us more when we start from the ground." She listened, truly listened, and her eyes warmed. "That is true," she said. "There is dignity in every level, if the heart is humble." He looked at her, really looked at her. "Most people do not think that way." She shrugged lightly. "Most people are afraid of being small. But I believe the heart that is small will remain small even if placed in a high position." Chuma's chest tightened, just slightly. Not with pain, with recognition. People spend their entire lives searching for someone who speaks like that. Without pride, without performance, without pretense. But before either of them could continue, a loud voice interrupted. "Look at this." Desmond Kalu walked toward their table, hands in his pockets, grin sharp and mocking. "I have been watching something interesting for some time now," he said, eyes locked on Nneka. He tapped Chuma's shoulder, not gently. "You, cleaner, stand up." The cafeteria grew quiet. Chuma did not move. Desmond frowned. "Are you deaf?" "I said stand up." Chuma lifted his gaze slowly, not with threat, not with fear, just calm. And he did not stand. Nneka felt her heartbeat spike. She opened her mouth to speak, but Desmond raised a hand. "Do you think this girl is your mate? You think she is for you?" Nneka stood. Her voice was low, but it carried. "Mr. Desmond, please lower your voice. There is no need for embarrassment here." Desmond's expression tightened, ego bruised. "You are defending him? A cleaner?" The cafeteria watched in charged silence. Nneka took a breath, steady, firm. "I am defending respect. Everyone deserves that." Desmond stared at her, stunned for a moment, then let out a short, bitter laugh. "We will see how far respect can take you in this Lagos." He stormed out. But something had shifted. Everyone saw her stand with the cleaner. Everyone saw her refuse to bow to ridicule. And in that moment, the story began moving toward its destiny. Slowly, quietly, powerfully. The days moved forward, but the echo of that cafeteria moment did not fade. In the silent corners of the office, whispers grew like vines. "Did you see how she spoke to Desmond? Because of a cleaner, oh, she must be pretending. She is too gentle. That type suffers in this world." Some of the voices were mocking. Some were curious. Some were jealous. But one thing was clear. People had begun to notice Nneka and Chuma. And in an environment where pride was currency, that attention was dangerous. One evening, the office had mostly emptied. The lights were dimmer, the halls quieter. Night air pressed against the tall glass windows, carrying the distant hum of city traffic. Chuma remained behind, sweeping and wiping surfaces, not because he needed to, but because he wanted to stay invisible just a little longer. He believed that when you watch people long enough, you learn the truth about who they are. He had learned more in that building in 2 months than the board had learned in 10 years. Some people bowed to power. Some bowed to money. Some bowed to despair. But Nneka, she bowed only to kindness. He finished his work and walked toward the janitor's storage closet, but stopped when he heard something. A soft sound. A quiet sniff. Someone crying. He followed the sound slowly. There, in the dim light near the staircase, sat Nneka. Her face was buried in her hands. Her shoulders trembled. Her breath was uneven. Chuma hesitated, not wanting to intrude, but her quiet pain pulled at him. Nneka, he said gently. She lifted her head, startled. Quickly, she wiped her eyes, forcing a small laugh. I am fine. It is nothing. But her voice trembled. Chuma stepped closer, slowly, respectfully. You do not have to explain, he said softly. But you do not have to pretend either. The sincerity in his tone broke something inside her defenses. She whispered, tears gathering again. I just feel tired. I am trying. Every day, I am trying to do everything right. To work hard. To be strong. To stay grateful. But sometimes, the world feels heavy. Her voice cracked. He sat beside her. Not too close, but close enough that she felt she was not alone. Nneka, he said quietly. There is nothing weak about being tired. The strongest hearts are the ones that keep going even when the world does not make it easy. She looked at him then, really looked. Not at a cleaner, not at a uniform, not at a man without wealth. She saw a soul. Thank you, she whispered. Chuma nodded gently. You don't have to thank me for truth. They sat in silence, not empty silence, but healing silence. A silence that allows two hearts to recognize each other. Without realizing it, Nneka leaned her head slightly toward him, not out of romance, but out of knowing she was safe. But as she did, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Desmond. His eyes widened, his mind already sharpening into suspicion, jealousy, and something darker. He did not speak. He did not need to. His silence carried a threat. He turned and walked away. But that moment sealed something. Not love, not commitment, not yet, but bond. And bond is stronger than intention. The next morning, the office atmosphere was different. Desmond didn't look at Nneka once. He didn't speak to her. He didn't call her into meetings. He was quiet. Too quiet. Nneka noticed, but she did not understand. Chuma noticed, and he understood perfectly. Jealousy is the beginning of destruction, especially when held by a man with pride and power. 2 days later, Nneka entered the office kitchen early. She saw Chuma quietly filling a kettle at the sink. The morning was still, and the air smelled faintly of coffee. She smiled, a real, warm smile. I brought something, she said softly. She opened her small food container and handed it to him. Inside was jollof rice, carefully packed. Chuma looked at it slowly, as though it was not food, but something far more meaningful. You made this, he asked softly. She nodded. For you. He swallowed lightly, not because of pride or surprise, but something deeper. People do not cook for you unless your presence means something to them. He took the container gently. Thank you, Nneka, he said, and his voice was deeper now, more certain. This means more than you know. She smiled, shy, gentle, real. You deserve to be cared for too. Those words pierced straight through him, not painfully, but with warmth. Something inside him opened. Trust. And trust is the foundation of love. But in another room, Desmond watched them through the glass partition. His jaw tightened. His hand closed into a fist. He did not care about Nneka. Not truly. But he cared deeply about control. And to him, a cleaner receiving what he believed should be his respect was an insult. His pride had been touched. And the pride of a man like Desmond was a dangerous thing. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing slowly. If she wants to stand with a cleaner, he whispered to himself, then let us see how far that takes her. A dangerous wave had begun moving. Quiet, steady, unstoppable. And neither Chuma nor Nneka could yet see what was coming. The city outside roared with life, but inside the heart of Okonkwo Petroleum headquarters, something cold had begun to form, like a shadow waiting for the right moment to move. Desmond did not act impulsively. He was too calculating for that. He watched. He listened. He waited. And from the shadows of his quiet jealousy, a plan began to shape itself with patient cruelty. 2 days later, the staff received a company-wide memo. Effective immediately, all junior staff are required to undergo performance reevaluation. The tone was stiff, cold, formal. People whispered in the hallways. This is strange. Why now? What did we do? But only one person truly felt its weight. Nneka. because attached to the email was a private notice that she alone received. Your performance has been flagged for review. You will be evaluated by the head of operations, Mr. Desmond Cole. Her hands trembled slightly. She knew she had done nothing wrong. But the office was not always about right or wrong. Sometimes, survival depended on who was standing beside you. Chuma saw her standing alone in the hallway, shoulders slightly tense, eyes distant. He approached slowly. "Nneka," he said softly. "Are you all right?" She nodded, but her smile did not reach her eyes. "I will be fine. I just have extra evaluation duties." Chuma looked at her for a moment, seeing more than she was saying. He wanted to tell her to be careful, but he also knew that advice is only heard when the heart is ready. So instead, he said, "Whatever happens, remember who you are. You are not defined by how they treat you." Nneka breathed in slowly. That small sentence strengthened her spine more than any corporate training ever could. When she entered his office later that day, the air felt heavier. Desmond did not look up immediately. He clicked through files on his computer, calm, almost careless. Finally, he lifted his eyes. "Sit." Nneka sat quietly, posture straight, hands neat on her lap. He studied her face for a moment, but not with curiosity, with calculation. "You have been quite noticeable lately," he said, voice controlled. She kept her expression still. "I have only been doing my work." "Yes," he said, leaning back, "and making friends." His tone was pointed, sharp. She felt her chest tighten, but she maintained her calm. "Everyone deserves kindness," she replied softly. A slow smile touched his lips. "But not everyone deserves opportunity." The message beneath the words was unmistakable. "You are stepping where I do not want you to." He continued, "Your diligence is acceptable, but unnecessary attachments can create distraction." He paused, letting silence settle like fog. "If you remain focused, your future here can grow." Nneka understood the meaning clearly. He wanted her to distance herself from Chuma. Not because Chuma was beneath her, but because Desmond could not stand being ignored. She met his gaze evenly. "My work speaks for itself." His smile faded. The conversation had ended, but the conflict had begun. In the cafeteria, days later, tension had begun to spread around the office. Some colleagues avoided her. Some whispered when she passed. Some shook their heads with pity, as if she had already lost something. But Chuma remained the same, steady, calm, present. One morning, he sat alone during break. Nneka walked toward him, but slower this time, as though she was thinking carefully. She sat down. She didn't speak at first. She just let the quiet settle. Then, softly, "Chuma, I am afraid." Chuma set down his cup of tea. "What are you afraid of?" "That I may lose everything simply because I chose to be kind." He took a breath. "Nneka, when the world tries to make you doubt yourself, that is when you must hold on to your heart the most." Her eyes softened, but she whispered, "Are we making a mistake?" Chuma looked at her, really looked. Not at her fear, but at her courage. And he answered simply, "No, we are doing what is right. And doing what is right is never a mistake. But sometimes it comes with a cost. Silence. But not the silence of emptiness. The silence of two souls standing together in uncertainty." And then, something unexpected happened. An elite black SUV pulled into the company parking lot. The guards straightened immediately. Staff paused. Phones lowered. Heartbeats quickened. Because this car only appeared for one reason. The chairman had arrived. The real chairman. Chuma's father. Chief Nneka Okankwo. The man whose name carried weight across Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, London, Dubai. The man whose presence could shift entire rooms. He had come without announcement. He was accompanied by two board executives, and he was heading straight for the building. Desmond froze, breath tightening. Nneka paused mid-movement. But the only person whose heartbeat truly changed was Chuma, because his two lives were about to collide. His secret, the one he had carried quietly, was now standing at the entrance. And only one question mattered now. Would he reveal himself? Or continue to hide? Because the next few minutes would change everything. Chuma Okonkwo stepped into the bustling Lagos office, the weight of his gold-laden life behind him. Today, no one knew he was the man who owned half of the city's oil and gas empire. Today, he was simply a cleaner, one among many, tasked with scrubbing floors, emptying bins, and blending in. The fluorescent lights of the corporate building flickered faintly, as if uncertain about the secrets they would witness that day. The scent of polished wood and lingering coffee filled the corridors, a reminder that despite its modern facade, this office had been built on human ambition, greed, and quiet desperation. Chuma adjusted his uniform, plain navy overalls, and inhaled sharply, feeling the unusual thrill of invisibility. "Morning, Glory," he said softly, nodding to the receptionist who returned a friendly smile. She had no idea who he was. "Morning," she replied, eyes sparkling with genuine warmth. From a distance, Nneka Okafor walked briskly, carrying her stack of files, her face etched with both determination and fatigue. She looked every bit the professional that Lagos admired, elegant, composed, and honest to a fault. Chuma watched her, heart tightening. There was a purity in her movements, a sincerity that money had never bought, and it made the world of his carefully constructed wealth seem hollow. As Chuma pushed his mop across the shiny marble floor, he overheard conversations, some trivial, some critical. Employees discussed deadlines, promotions, office politics. Yet there was one constant thread he noticed. Nneka's name came up again and again, praised for her diligence, honesty, and refusal to compromise her principles, even when it meant personal loss. He paused, leaning on his mop, thinking of the irony. Here he was, a man of unimaginable wealth, trying to learn the essence of love and integrity from someone who would never suspect he had anything to teach her about life. Lunch break arrived, and Chuma followed the subtle rhythm of the office, observing from corners, lingering in quiet hallways. He noticed the petty competitions, the whispers behind closed doors. Benson, ever suspicious, cast subtle glances toward him, though he couldn't quite place the strange aura of this cleaner. Chidera, seated across from Nneka in the break room, laughed softly at one of Nneka's anecdotes, a lightness in her eyes that Chuma could not help but admire. It was then that Chuma's careful observation revealed something he hadn't anticipated, moments of vulnerability in Nneka's day. He saw how she paused at a family photo on her desk, tracing a finger over her younger sibling, Blessing's smiling face. He noticed the way her shoulders slumped ever so slightly when her workload threatened to crush her. And when she spoke with her colleagues, it was never with malice or pretense, only honesty. By the end of the day, Chuma's disguise had begun to feel less like a uniform and more like a second skin. Yet he had to be careful. One misstep, one careless word, and his entire ruse could unravel. Desmond, his loyal aide, had warned him repeatedly. "Patience, Chuma. Observe. Learn. Only then will she see who you really are, and only then will she love you for yourself, not your fortune." But patience was not easy. The heart, Chuma discovered, had a mind of its own. That evening, as the office emptied and shadows lengthened, he found himself following Nneka to the elevator. She carried a small package of files, her steps quick, purposeful. He mirrored her pace in the background, careful not to be seen. A sudden commotion erupted near the HR office. Chinedu, the strict HR manager, was confronting Chuma Samuel about a misplaced document. Voices rose, tension crackling through the air. Chuma watched silently, understanding that this, too, was a lesson. The office, like life, was full of tests, and honesty was always measured under pressure. As Nneka passed by, she caught sight of Chuma in the corner, carrying cleaning supplies. Their eyes met for a fleeting second, a spark, a recognition of shared humanity, though neither knew why. Chuma felt an unfamiliar vulnerability, a crack in the armor he had so carefully built over decades. Days passed, each a repetition of observation, subtle gestures, small acts of invisible kindness. Chuma cleaned the floors where Nneka walked, silently offering comfort in the most unobtrusive way possible. He mended a broken chair before anyone noticed, left her favorite tea near her desk, ensured her work area was pristine, always careful to remain unseen, unacknowledged. And then, the test came. The company announced an upcoming gala, a charity event to celebrate their top performers. Nneka's name was on the guest list. Chuma's heart pounded. He knew attending as himself could reveal everything, and yet the idea of seeing her in the glow of admiration, respected by all, was irresistible. Desmond whispered a plan. "You must go, Chuma." but not as yourself. Watch. Learn. Let her heart reveal itself before the truth is shown. At the gala, chandeliers glittered, laughter echoed through the grand hall, and the elite of Lagos mingled in tailored suits and glittering gowns. Chuma stayed in the shadows, invisible, blending among the catering staff. He watched as Nneka laughed genuinely at a colleague's joke, her eyes alight with life. He noted how she treated every person with respect, from the janitor to the CEO. And in that moment, he realized why he had undertaken this dangerous disguise, not to test her, but to rediscover what true human connection meant. But fate has a way of testing hearts when they are most vulnerable. A spilled glass of wine sent a ripple of panic through the staff, and Chuma, quick to act, moved to prevent disaster. In doing so, he accidentally brushed against Nneka's hand. Their eyes met, and for the first time, the world seemed to pause. There was no recognition, no acknowledgement of his true identity, yet the connection was undeniable. Something unspoken passed between them, a hint of trust, curiosity, and inexplicable warmth. As the night wore on, Chuma returned to his humble quarters within the building, exhausted but elated. The journey was only beginning. Love, honesty, and obedience, the three pillars he had sought to test, were no longer abstract ideals. They were alive in Nneka Okafor, shining brightly amidst the shadows of ambition and pretense. And somewhere, deep in the heart of Lagos, the billionaire cleaner whispered to himself, "Soon, she will see me, not for my wealth, but for who I truly am." The city of Lagos had a pulse of its own, relentless and unforgiving. Nightfall settled over the skyline, casting long shadows across glass towers and concrete streets. Inside the offices of Okonkwo Oil and Gas, the air was thick with ambition, tension, and secrets that no one dared speak aloud. Chuma Okonkwo moved silently through the empty corridors, mop in hand, his overalls stained with the day's labor. He had grown accustomed to this life of observation, of invisibility, but the lessons of patience were proving harder than he had anticipated. Every glance, every whispered conversation, every small act of integrity from Nneka Okafor became a reminder of what true character looked like. And every moment he spent disguised as a cleaner deepened his desire not just to be loved, but to understand what love meant in its purest form. This morning had begun like any other, yet the tension in the office was palpable. Chinedu, the HR manager, had summoned Nneka to discuss a troubling report. A document had gone missing, and blame was quickly spreading. Desmond had warned Chuma, "Watch carefully. People reveal themselves when tested. This is a moment of truth." Chuma crouched behind a potted plant near the reception, observing the unfolding drama. Nneka entered Chinedu's office, her posture rigid, but her eyes calm and steady. She had the rare ability to remain composed even under scrutiny, and Chuma marveled at her courage. "You know the company rules," Chinedu said sharply, his voice echoing off the polished walls. "Lapses like this cannot be tolerated." Nneka listened, acknowledging the gravity of the situation. Yet she did not panic, did not fabricate excuses. Instead, she asked questions, sought facts, and insisted on fairness. Her integrity was on display, unshaken, even as others whispered and pointed fingers behind her back. Meanwhile, Benson prowled the corridors, suspicion etched across his face. Something about the new cleaner seemed unusual. He studied Chuma with a subtle intensity, trying to catch a hint of pretense, a crack in the facade. But Chuma's mastery of invisibility was absolute, every movement precise, every expression carefully controlled. Later that afternoon, Chuma Samuel approached Nneka at her desk, his admiration for her integrity unmistakable. "You handled that with incredible grace," he said quietly, careful not to draw attention. Nneka smiled faintly. "I believe the truth always has a way of surfacing," she replied. Chuma watched from afar, heart swelling. Her words, simple yet profound, resonated with something deep within him. Here was a woman whose life was guided by honesty, respect, and compassion, values he had long taken for granted in the pursuit of wealth. But the office was not free from tension. Rumors began to spread that someone had tampered with sensitive company documents. Fingers pointed, alliances formed and fractured, and loyalties were tested. Chuma moved among the chaos unnoticed, cleaning floors that bore the weight of ambition and deceit. And yet, even in silence, he acted, correcting errors, removing obstacles, ensuring that Nneka's day remained uninterrupted. One evening, as rain poured over Lagos in heavy sheets, Chuma found himself outside the company's grand windows, watching Nneka rush to secure a folder that had nearly fallen from a precarious stack. Her hair was damp, her uniform clinging, but her composure was intact. In that moment, Chuma understood the true price of silence: restraint, patience, and the courage to act without recognition. Desmond had warned him repeatedly. Love is not shown in grand gestures alone, Chuma. It is in the quiet moments, the unseen sacrifices, the silent protection of what you hold dear. And then came the crisis that would test them both. Late one night, a security alarm blared through the empty corridors. Chidera, passing near the storage wing, discovered a group of men attempting to steal critical company data. Panic spread as employees gathered, uncertain and afraid. Chuma did not hesitate. Using his knowledge of the building and his silent strength, he intervened, diverting the intruders and securing the sensitive files before anyone realized what had happened. Nneka, alerted by the commotion, rushed toward the scene, only to witness the aftermath: a scene of chaos contained, files safe, and no harm done. Yet, no one saw him. No one knew the billionaire cleaner had saved the day. Benson, still suspicious, could only wonder at the timing of the incident, but even he could not connect the dots. Nneka's calm presence, however, remained. She quickly organized her colleagues, reassured frightened employees, and ensured that the matter was reported correctly. Her courage, her integrity, and her unwavering composure left a profound mark on Chuma, who realized that the love he sought was not just admiration. It was a respect for character, an alignment of hearts guided by honesty. Days turned into weeks, and Chuma continued his dual life: billionaire by night, humble observer by day. Every action he took, every quiet intervention, drew him closer to understanding the essence of human connection. And in the quiet moments, when Nneka paused by the window to watch Lagos glisten under the afternoon sun, he felt an ache in his heart, a longing to reveal himself, yet knowing the timing was not yet right. Then came the subtle shift that would change everything. A misplaced envelope, a note of gratitude from a colleague, a small act of kindness unnoticed by most. These tiny threads began to weave a tapestry of trust and admiration. Nneka, though unaware of Chuma's true identity, began to sense a presence in her day, a figure always there, always watching, always protecting. One afternoon, as Nneka stepped into the office lounge, she noticed a cleaning cloth neatly folded on her desk, a cup of tea at her elbow, and a subtle note: "For your strength and honesty. A friend." She looked around, puzzled, but saw no one. Yet the gesture touched her profoundly. Chuma, observing from a distance, felt a thrill unlike any he had known. This was the first time she had sensed him, not through wealth, influence, or power, but through genuine, unseen care. The office, once a place of ordinary ambition, had become a stage for quiet heroism, integrity, and the slow dance of two hearts moving toward recognition. Chuma understood now that love required more than wealth. It required patience, courage, and the willingness to act without expectation. And in the heart of Lagos, under the endless hum of life and ambition, the billionaire cleaner whispered to himself once more: "Soon, she will see me, not as the man she knows in her world, but as the one who understands her heart." The first rays of Lagos sunlight filtered through the towering glass windows of Okonkwo Oil and Gas, casting streaks of gold across the polished floors. The office, usually alive with the clatter of keyboards and murmurs of ambition, was unusually quiet. Something had shifted overnight. The air felt charged with anticipation, as if the city itself was holding its breath for what was about to unfold. Chuma Okonkwo adjusted his navy overalls, now worn and faded from weeks of labor and careful disguise. Today felt different. He had watched, waited, and intervened silently. He had seen Nneka Okafor, the woman whose honesty and courage had captured his heart, navigate every challenge with grace. And now, the final step of his journey was near. Nneka arrived early, as always, her arms carrying a stack of meticulously organized files. She paused at her desk, a moment of reflection passing across her features. The office was calm, yet her intuition whispered that something extraordinary was about to occur. She had felt it in the subtle gestures left for her: the neatly folded cloth, the cup of tea, the note signed only as a friend. Chuma moved quietly, his mop in hand, blending with the shadows as always. But this morning, his heart raced with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. He knew that the line between observation and revelation had to be carefully drawn. One wrong move, and the delicate balance of trust and admiration he had built could shatter. The tranquility was broken by a sudden announcement over the PA system. "Attention, all staff. Today, we will honor our top performers and celebrate the individuals who have made extraordinary contributions to our company. Please assemble in the main hall." A murmur of excitement swept through the office. Employees whispered about promotions, recognition, and awards. Nneka, always modest, accepted the invitation with quiet dignity, unaware that the true moment of revelation was about to involve her in ways she could never have imagined. Chuma followed, cleaning cart in tow, pretending to attend to routine maintenance. From the shadows, he observed every detail: the smiles, the nervous glances, the subtle competition between colleagues. But his focus was on Nneka. Her calm presence amid the flurry of excitement reminded him why he had undertaken this extraordinary disguise: to find someone whose heart was untainted by ambition or pretense. The ceremony began, and applause echoed through the hall. Chidera, seated beside Nneka, leaned in, whispering, "You're going to be recognized, I just know it." Nneka smiled faintly, her humility preventing her from fully believing it. Then, the CEO, an imposing figure in a tailored suit, stepped forward. "Today, we celebrate not only performance, but character. There is one individual whose contributions have gone largely unseen, whose integrity and courage have protected this company in ways few understand. This person has acted without expectation, without recognition, embodying the very values we hold dear." Chuma's heart skipped a beat. He knew the moment had come. The crowd murmured, curiosity sparking in every eye. The CEO gestured to the side of the hall, and a screen illuminated with images of the office, moments captured in security footage, showing small, quiet acts of heroism. A spill cleaned before anyone noticed, files corrected, a potential disaster averted. Gasps filled the room as the truth became visible, piece by piece. And then, the final image appeared: Chuma Okonkwo in his cleaning uniform, intervening silently to stop a group of intruders from stealing critical company data. Recognition struck like lightning. Whispers turned to exclamations. The billionaire had been among them all along. Nneka's eyes widened. She took a step back, processing the impossible truth. The man she had unknowingly admired for his quiet acts of care, the man whose presence she had felt but never fully understood, was none other than Chuma Okonkwo, the very owner of the company. Chuma approached, finally shedding the disguise that had concealed him for so long. His tailored suit replaced the overalls, but the humility in his eyes remained. "Nneka," he said softly, "I could no longer remain unseen. You deserve to know who I truly am." For a moment, there was silence. The crowd faded into a blur. All that mattered was the woman who had captured his heart with nothing but honesty, courage, and kindness. Nneka stepped closer, searching his eyes for the truth. "You all this time?" she whispered, disbelief mingling with awe. Chuma nodded. "I wanted to know the real you, beyond wealth, beyond power. I wanted to see the woman whose heart is guided by integrity. And now, I hope you can see the man I truly am, not for my fortune, but for the person I've always been." Tears welled in Nneka's eyes, not of confusion, but of profound recognition. She had admired the quiet strength she felt around him, never realizing the source. Now, the puzzle pieces fell into place. The acts of unseen kindness, the protection, the subtle gestures, all had been him. The crowd watched, spellbound, as two souls connected beyond the barriers of wealth, status, and expectation. Chidera, Glory, and even Benson looked on, realizing the extraordinary nature of what had unfolded before them. Nneka finally spoke, her voice steady but emotional. Chuma, your honesty, your patience. I see it now. You've shown me more in silence than most do with words. I don't know what to say. Chuma smiled, gentle and reassuring. Then say nothing. Let our actions speak from this day forward. In the weeks that followed, the office buzzed with stories of the billionaire who had walked among them, unseen, and the woman whose integrity had captured not only his heart, but the admiration of all who knew her. Chuma and Nneka's bond grew, founded not on wealth or superficial attraction, but on respect, honesty, and the shared understanding of what it meant to act selflessly. The city of Lagos, ever vibrant and chaotic, seemed to pause in acknowledgement of their story. It became a tale whispered in corridors, celebrated in hushed tones at lunch tables, and admired by those who had long forgotten the power of integrity and love. And one evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, painting the city in hues of gold and crimson, Chuma and Nneka stood together on the balcony of the company tower. The wind carried the distant sounds of the bustling streets below, yet in that moment, they were apart from it all. Chuma turned to Nneka, taking her hand gently. We've learned that love isn't about recognition or wealth, he said. It's about honesty, patience, and the courage to be seen for who we truly are. Nneka smiled, warmth radiating from her eyes. And sometimes, she whispered, it's about believing in someone even before we know the full story. As the city lights shimmered below them, the dust settled on a tale of integrity, courage, and unexpected love. Chuma and Nneka, two hearts brought together not by fortune but by truth, stood ready to face the world, not as billionaire and employee, but as equals, united in honesty, trust, and a love forged in the quiet moments of unseen heroism. In Lagos, amidst the chaos, ambition, and ambition-driven hearts, their story remained a testament. True love is found not in wealth, but in character. And when the dust finally settles, only honesty, courage, and patience endure. And so, we have come to the end of this powerful journey. A journey that reminds us that love is not found in money or status or what the world sees, but in character, honesty, and the quiet truth of the heart. Chuma entered that company as a cleaner, not to trick anyone, but to understand the truth of the people around him. And Nneka showed us that real love is patient, sincere, and open to the heart even when the world does not understand. Slow emotional. If this story touched you, even just a little, don't leave without showing it. Your like, your comment, your share, is what allows more stories like this to travel across the world and touch someone else. So please, gentle emphasis, like this video, subscribe to Spiritual African Stories, and share this story with someone who believes in love, or someone who has forgotten it. Now, I ask you this question, and I want you to answer it in the comments below. If you were Nneka, would you still love Chuma after discovering his true identity? There is no right or wrong, only your truth. Write your answer. I am reading every comment. Thank you, truly, for watching. This is Spiritual African Stories. Soft, warm tone. Where the heart speaks, the soul listens. And every story carries a lesson that remains. Until next time, stay true, stay kind, and never stop believing in the power of love. Fade with silence.